I would really like to welcome everybody today to our Space Cat book launch for our new title, Severed Souls, which is our new anthology on the theme of aliens and otherness. And we're really happy to welcome you today to our YouTube channel for this online book launch. And we have some interviews with Ivan Richardson, John Fulton, Monica Wang, Take Maria Smits, and James Walton.
Before we dive into those interviews, let me give you a rundown of each author's piece in the anthology. So first off, we have Ivan Richardson, who has a short story called Following the Lines, which is about a young woman who believes she is an alien and that her real people will come and take her away. Then we have John, or J.K. Fulton, whose short story Call of the Void follows a NASA astronaut as she goes out on a seemingly routine spacewalk and encounters an unexpected force. Then we have Monica Wang, who has two flash fiction pieces, Insects and No One Reads Misconnections Anymore, but here goes. Insects is told from the perspective of a woman with a crippling phobia, though it's unclear whether her seeing insects everywhere is an irrational fear or the result of some traumatic experience. And No One Reads Misconnections Anymore is a personal ad with a manic twist. Then we have Take Maria Smits, who has a flash fiction piece called How to Honor Our Beginning, which tells the story of an alien who is entrusted with the stewardship of Earth by three powerful women. And finally, we have James Walton, who has two poems and one flash fiction with us. First off, there's Collected Works, which is a beautifully written flash fiction piece about a man who expresses himself through the literature he surrounds himself with. He also has two poems, which are SOS, an almost desperate plea to another species for humanity's souls, that James manages to infuse with hope of salvation while still emphasizing the severity of the situation it describes. And Interstellar Notes, Travel Warnings, Earth, which is a warning about the powers that be in the universe, though it's not clear whether those cosmic fixers and shakers are alien or human. So let's begin.
So, what was it about the aliens and otherness theme that sparked something off for you in your writing?
In my science fiction stories, I have this character which is basically the Green Man, but he's an alien. And so if there's any opportunity to write about aliens, I go to him because he's one of the favourite of the aliens that I've written.
The word alien is what I jumped on straight away. An encounter with the alien is one of the staples of science fiction. And there's many different types of encounter, but the one that I've always been interested in is the inexplicable encounter, the type that opens up the horizons of human experience to a bigger universe. It was Ian Banks called this type of encounter an outside context problem, an encounter completely outside your society's experience you didn't prepare for, you couldn't prepare for because it's so completely outside the bounds of your own context. Right. So it's something completely unknowable and strange, and in the case of my story, not explained.
Anya, can you pass on a message for me? Go ahead. Tell Sergi his toilet's leaking again. A brilliant string of sun-bright particles is trailing the ISS. The first time I saw it, I was in awe of its beauty. It wasn't until I mentioned it to one of the other astronauts that I found out that the toilet in the Russian module was known to be a bit leaky. And the mystical beauty sparkling in the void was actually Russian urine. Copy, laughs Anya. I captured the golden sparkles with the HD camera, immortalizing them in all their high-definition glory. The kids in Houston will enjoy this. Children love a bit of toilet humor. My brow furrows. Anya, can you see this? I direct my suit camera towards the sparkles. The HD camera records but doesn't transmit, so Houston has to make do with the low quality video feed from my suit. See what, Tamsin? The P drops. They're closing in on the station. It's not possible. If the Russian toilet is leaking, the pressure of the tank is going to propel the tromlets away from the station. But the sparkles dead astern of the ISS definitely seem to be closing in fast.
So the feeling of being sort of on the outside, of being othered by mainstream society, yeah, it provoked, I think, a lot of those feelings for me, of that feeling of being on the outside.
A lot of time that's just what I keep writing about, people who don't fit in properly. Even normal seeming people who are just a bit kind of off inside, and they're going through life not quite doing the right things, or not quite saying or thinking the right things.
I guess I've always been a bit of an outsider anyway, so I like to write from the perspective of an observer who uses their experience, I guess, to try and catalogue what's going on around them.
That ties in nicely with Mary Burns' Bonnier story. In this extract, a young artist in war-torn Scotland accompanies a Lithuanian refugee to his local Catholic church.
It was nothing like the villagers' plain Presbyterian church. He was at her side. He took her arm and guided her in. They sat at the back. After a few minutes, the priest entered, dressed in a green silk garment, another priest behind him swinging a brass receptacle that poured out incense. These were followed by a train of little boys in white tunics. She was in a foreign land.
I wondered what it is about the figure of the alien that makes it such a recurring kind of image within our culture as a whole, you know, not just within science fiction stories, but film, TV, music, fashion, all of that.
A lot of science fiction about alien planets make me feel really small and alone too.
Yes.
But when you think about, after you read it, there's this sense that you're here surrounded by so many other people.
Yes.
And even if you don't quite fit in, you still at least fit in better than aliens do.
Yeah.
If you look at the whole world around us and all those things that are going on with films and TV shows and writing and novels and books and everything else, there is this appeal to try and understand what it is that's going on in everyone's lives, but through a common denominator, I guess, of the observance of the person who's outside the fence and not generally accepted in the tribe, so to speak.
There's an old adage that there are only two plots. First one is a person goes on a journey, and the other one is a stranger comes to town. It's not true. There are more than two, but it's a good way of looking at things. They both have something in common. There's a disruption of the status quo, and that's what you need to get a story off the ground. So the alien, whether it's extraterrestrial or not, it does exactly that. It breaks the status quo, gets the story moving.
In this extract of Sam Parr's Backlands, the stranger in question proves very strange indeed.
Hello again. You followed my instructions. Then breathe in the road's vacancy. Do not be afraid. The breath on your ear will smell of spearmint, not wrong me. This isn't a horror story. The thing over your mouth is not a hand holding a cloth. It is a gate. Hush now. There's no point running. These parts of the world are very far from anything, under the right light.
Where we've got fiction where you're sort of looking at it from perhaps the alien's point of view, or we show the alien's point of view, it allows us to examine ourselves, our own culture, and our own values from a completely outside perspective. It allows us to, look at some of our fears.
We've got the safety of our modern day comforts, but that kind of insulates us from the magic of what used to be. Then we, discard the sort of scary things like the Fae, and all those things that we never understood before, illnesses or mental health issues. But now we surround ourselves with technology, and I think those fears might creep into technology. And then, of course, you can't help but extrapolate and look to the future and look to, going to the stars and wondering about other beings out there. So
as soon as you decide to write a story about aliens in some way, you have this choice as the writer about where are you going to place the viewpoint, the kind of, you know, the camera view of the story. Is that going to be the viewpoint of the alien or othered figure, or is it going to be an observer looking at the alien, perhaps human or whatever?
In my story, it's the observer. It's the astronaut who's, you know, on a spacewalk outside the International Space Station, as you mentioned earlier.
It's set kind of around the International Space Station with an astronaut. It's all very familiar. It's all very kind of NASA high tech, and it feels like a really kind of familiar world of space technology. And then you drop into that this kind of mysterious otherness that we can't really get a handle on, that remains very ambiguous within the story.
I wanted to ground the story. I mean, even though it's set in space,
Yes,
I've tried to make it as absolutely realistic as possible. The beginning of the story, it's set in space, but it's not science fiction. It happens all the time. You can watch it on YouTube. In fact, I do quite often watch the spacewalks live streamed on YouTube. So I wanted to ground the language as well. So it's all very prosaic, the procedures and jargon of NASA. It's one of the lovely paradoxes of space exploration. You're out there in space, you're exploring the universe. It's the final frontier where virtually no one has gone before. But the daily routine, it's tightly scheduled, it's laborious, it's tedious, it's procedure driven. It's down to the number of turns on the cordless drill that they use. Oh yeah, that nut's going to take you 16 turns. Okay, yeah, and it was 16 turns. They know every single step. It's so
pre-scheduled.
Yes.
And then right down to your joke about the astronauts peeing in space as well. It's lovely.
Well, that's true. I mean, that was a story that Tim Peake used to tell in interviews about seeing the gorgeous golden sparkles. Yeah, that's the Russian toilets.
So, Ivan, not to give too much away, but I think that the sort of setup concept that you have is this character who believes she is an alien and has been kind of planted here, and eventually her people will come and collect her. And she is, at the start of the story, about to test that theory in a very dramatic way.
She took a step back towards the open window, wondering if she could crawl back inside. Perhaps she should do this another day, maybe tomorrow. Another blast of wind took her balance, almost knocking her over the edge. She let out a little scream, but it was lost in the wind. Hugging the wall, she managed to stabilise herself. Back was no safer than going forwards. The opening scene actually, I think, was inspired by a dream I had. And I think a lot of it I then sort of walked back from there. I felt I had to give the background in order to then explain how she got to that place.
Yes, choosing that viewpoint, how did that affect the way you approach the story, the language, all of that?
I was looking more from her feeling of outsideness and how that has affected her growing up.
Yeah.
How that has affected her interactions with other people. Also trying to show her struggles to interact with normal society, with other people, with normal people. Try and show why she believes she's an alien, because they feel like another species to her. Eventually, Mother stopped crying and stared at Kate. Her look was somewhere between anger and confusion. Kate stayed at the table. She felt like she was in trouble, but didn't know why. Mother didn't say anything.
So let's see. I was just looking again at the opening line, actually, of your short story. The story is called "How to Honor a Beginning," and it opens with the tall, tree-like being stepped out of his spacecraft and walked into the moonlit forest. I mean, that's just so lovely, because immediately you get that fusion of the spacecraft and this tree-like being, and right from the beginning we get that fusing of folklore with sci-fi, really, and the fable. And I don't think it's giving too much away to say that we've also got wonderful figures like the Siren and Baba Yaga, the East European witch figure as well. So how fantastic to find them in this slightly kind of sci-fi
Yeah.
as well. Wonderful. So the other kind of side, there's a kind of duality really to the theme that we set for the anthology. So there was aliens and otherness, and I wondered, did the otherness feature for you at all in the way you were approaching this story, or was it more the sort of the alien that you were addressing?
I think it was mainly the fact that I was using the alien, which is like the Green Man, and he's given the name the Green Man, but of course he is this complete different alien, which is he's a tall tree-like being. So he is very other, he is very different, but he's very accepting of the world around him. So when he goes to Earth, he really connects with the trees and the plant life, and so he's very accepting of it. And I think the way that came, I think the only other bit of the other was when the three women are talking about what's going to happen and how there's going to be humans and these ape-like beings, and I think what kind of distanced him, or rather what he couldn't understand about the humans, was that maybe the humans wouldn't love the planet around them and the flora and the fauna as much as he does.
Humanity's lack of love for Earth also inspired this post-apocalyptic poem by Emily.
He told tales of bipeds who once populated above ground, weaved dwellings from concrete, communicated through electromagnetic waves, but lost touch with nature. Their drive for fake warmth, false chills, electrified the planet and changed weather patterns.
And Monica, you've got two stories, in fact, two lovely flash fiction pieces in the anthology. I think it's right in saying for both of the stories, you've taken a kind of human viewpoint, haven't you?
For insects, yes. For misconnections, I feel like the reader is possibly the human, because the person writing the ad isn't. And you have a story where there's technically no normal person in there. The reader, I guess, is the normal person.
Yes.
At this.
The one thing that struck me looking at the two stories back to back is the attitude of the character at the center of the story towards aliens is completely opposite. I mean, one of the characters is profoundly spooked and unnerved by the idea of alien possession, whereas the character in the other story is like, whatever.
Insects is the one I'm thinking of. That started as a story about literal aliens taking over people through holes in their heads. But I think you can also read the ending as this person who is just not fitting in properly, having this weird paranoia about everyone around her. She didn't look at Sam on the way home. She would not tell them about her true fear. Cats, dogs, crows. She'd forced herself to live with the sight of them. But humans, people, rushed about everywhere she went, and some had deep, barely concealed openings from which came unsettling sounds. Sheena knew if she listened, if she opened herself up to those sounds, she'd hear in her own head next the rustling and chattering of insect parts. For the No One Reads Misconnections Anymore piece, I feel like since I'm writing from the perspective of this person who is really strange, among people who are presumably equally strange, it's probably harder to sustain that over a longer story.
I love the playfulness of it. I mean, it's a very dark story, but it is very playful and kind of tongue-in-cheek as well. There is that phrase, which is, again, just dropped in and has got so much behind it. My bloodline's just hosting them for a few generations, and it's like so creepy.
In the short story about a person who spends his life really having particular sentences from books that he's grown up with inscribed on his body, or titles of books and authors' names and things, it's because he feels a commitment to preserving that collection of things that have occurred during his life and before his life, and for his family too, although he's very much a lone person. And he finally makes a connection when he notices one of his bosses has a little tattoo on her neck, which surprises him.
Yeah. So the last thing that I wanted to ask you is this kind of broader question of, do you think that there is life there out in the universe, and if so, does it matter to us at all?
Funnily enough, in one of my other Green Man stories, which I think it was published in Shoreline of Infinity a while back, the Green Man is in his spacecraft and he's actually going from one habitable planet to another, and his AI is calculating how many planets there are. And of course, we now know that there are there's lots of stars out there, and potentially lots and lots and lots of planets in the habitable zones, in the Goldilocks zones of those stars. So potentially there is life out there, definitely. I would think that the chance is just so high. The question is, to what stage has that life got?
Here's an example of a Severed Souls story in which the aliens are as advanced, if not more so, than our human protagonist.
Elva silenced the alarm. No point obsessing over it, and panicking would only compound the issue. Instead, she tried to recall what had happened. There had been a flash, an invisible uppercut punching her into the air, an explosion. We were attacked. The memories came like a sword to her brain. Roaches, the skittering horrors bursting from the moon's crust to thread their needle limbs through her squad mates. Screams turning to static in her ears, micromass rounds tearing through the creatures, festoons of crystallised innards stretching starward. Then the sergeant, overwhelmed, pulled a grenade. The shockwave must have carried her clear of the carnage. Given the moon's half gravity, that could be some distance.
Well, we've discovered about 5,000 exoplanets across 3,000 star systems. Since we started being able to detect them, that's only about 30 years since we've been able to tell. And as time goes on, we are getting better at detecting them, and we're getting more and more and more. So the number is growing all the time. So we're pretty sure that planets are reasonably commonplace. And our own galaxy has got 100 billion to 400 billion stars. And there's one estimate that says that about 11 billion of those star systems will have a planet that's roughly Earth-sized in the habitable zone where there is the possibility of liquid water. And that's what we think is the requirement for life. So, and then that's just our galaxy. Then there's roughly 200 billion galaxies in the observable universe. So even if the conditions for life are incredibly unlikely in terms of the size of the planet, temperature, protection from cosmic rays, because you need a magnetosphere, axial inclination for seasons, that might be important. Close lunar companion for tides, that might be important. But even if you need all of those things, that the conditions have to be so similar to Earth, there are bound to be some planets out there with the right conditions. So I can't believe that there wouldn't be life out there. And we don't even know how close to Earth the requirements are. We haven't even ruled out the rest of our solar system. There could be long dead microbes in Mars. You never know, that once flourished beneath the sands. There could be creatures swimming in the subsurface oceans of Europa.
The possibility of finding life in our solar system is what inspired this poem by Emily.
Mars. Life is a nightclub, drunken dances in time with the lake's motion, lidded by ice and populated by shapeshifters. Slender grains widen into berries, divide into grains, and start again. Rock's minerals yield energy. This party endlessly supplies hermit tendencies, a fear of sunlight displacing the club's atmosphere, forcing a look at things best hidden. Venus. Life is summer picnics where pastels cover mud, dances in unstained white, cool translucent fruits, a busyness of perfection. To live on air is to keep moving even in sleep. A pause could be death, a wisp could block the sun's nutrients. Nothing is unexposed, no one can hold hidden depths or confess to a dark side. Life is on the surface, unexamined. Both dream of the other, wonder if a marriage might be possible. a planet that allows the sea dancers and airborne to dwell on the surface, experience light and dark.
But then, of course, you've got the huge distances between.
Yes.
That, as far as we know, it's very difficult to overcome those distances and start communicating with one another.
Yes.
A lot of my friends are quantum scientists and astrophysicists,
Right.
and they say there's a high probability that there has been or will be life in the universe.
Yes.
But the probability that they're living right now at the same time as we are is lower.
I like to think that there is. I like to think that there are other people out there we can learn from and eventually join with. You know, I feel sort of hopeful towards that, you know, that's when in our history that would happen, I don't know.
When we find life, it won't be like us, will it?
No.
It will be almost unimaginable.
Yeah.
But science fiction writers do their best to keep trying to imagine it.
Yes, to imagine the unimaginable.
I think humans do view other people through a lens of curiosity, but also fear. I'm still hopeful that, you know, that if there are other beings out there, we will hopefully see them more with curiosity and open-mindedness and with a view to cooperation rather than fear. But they might be thinking the same thing about us.
Well, let's hope our first encounter, should we have one, goes better than the one in this flash-written piece by Jennifer Moore.
Analia Kjorovac. She's finally back. Or is she? The world holds its breath as it watches and waits. There's definite movement inside, sir. This is it. The pod splits itself open like an egg, and there she is, her body an overblown balloon, stretching the thin silver skin suit to its elastic limits. Shapes ripple beneath the shimmered surface, tiny waves of motion, like a fetus turning in the tight confines of its amniotic world. Keep them trained, men. She's on the move. The muscles in her bloated legs are wasted. That much is clear from her bowed, shuffling gait. But it's not until she removes her helmet that the full extent of the physical damage can be seen. Blistered skin, the colour of ripe avocado flesh, blackened stubs for teeth, swollen orange orbs for eyes, blazing with triumph. Or is it fear? That depends how much of her, of Analia Kjorovac, remains. If she can still speak, she might be able to tell them. If her vocal cords haven't been licked clean away by harsh, parasitic tongues. 20 Special Forces plasma rifles are cocked and ready as she stretches her new jaws wide, the corners of her lips cracking with the effort, oozing a pale white liquid. Please, help me. Her clotted tongue is fighting for the right words, scabbed muscles tearing with the effort of forcing them through. It's not too late. Please, get this thing out of me. But what comes pulsing out of the gap where her mouth should be is a discordant screech. And it tells the waiting rifles something else entirely.
Our solar system would not even scratch the surface. So the universe could be teeming with life. It could be empty, and I think I would find that rather more frightening than a universe that's teeming with life.
Yeah, and also I think feeling motivated to try to contact other civilizations, or at least leaving traces of ours, is a big thing in culture, like for culture, human culture.
There was that program, wasn't there, where sort of citizen astronomers were involved in trying to decode any potential signals coming back from space to see if there was anything that was unusual or an anomaly of some kind.
Have they found anything?
I don't know. I don't believe so. But it was, you know, it was interesting that they were getting kind of ordinary people, you know, anybody on their computer was involved in just kind of sifting through some of this data. And to be part of that project of reaching out to see if there was anything out there at all.
I think, technology's been advancing enough that ordinary people can do this too. There's this guy on Twitter who takes pictures of planets on his own telescope, and over the years, like, he's taken much clearer and more detailed photos And he's not even an astrophysicist or anything.
Yeah,
He's
I'm
a
very struck by the increasing role of citizen astronomy, in kind of interacting with and supporting what scientists are doing out there as well.
In this poem by Liz Byfield, scientists receive a mysterious visit.
The darkness thins to a pale grey dawn, revealing a miracle. In the undulating bowl, an immaculate pattern of perfect circles. No footprints or broken fences, just an electrical smell and a hint of purple mist.
I hope there's something out there which informs all of our lives and lives elsewhere, and that all of us writing together, particularly in an anthology like this, can bring those various points of view to home, and make, if you like, a state in which we can all take part in that view. And I hope that throughout this book, everyone gets a chance to see that foreign viewpoint gives us all our common humanity, that individual, strange little way of looking at the world is what makes us all one in the end.
Well, James has summed up the theme of the anthology beautifully there, actually. And I would like to thank James and all the other Space Cat stars who provided us with fascinating interviews and readings, and who've really, worked with us through this whole journey that we've been on to put the anthology together over the past year or so. So thank you all, the Space Cat stars, including those who've joined us today. And that really wraps up the launch side of things. The Severed Souls anthology is now out there. You can go and get a hold of a copy of this on our website, the Space Cat Press website. Lots of other interesting stuff on there as well. There's authors' readings, little clips and blogs and so on. But also, excitingly, we've got our first, well, not our first face-to-face launch. We've got a face-to-face launch in a month's time at the end of November in Leicester for the Severed Souls anthology, but also our first anthology, Uncharted Constellations. So we'll be gathering together some of our authors for readings, for chat, and of course for cake. And that, after all, is the most important part of a book birthday, to have the books and to have some cake. So all that's left for today is for us to tuck into some cake. But do join us in a month's time, if you can, in Leicester City Centre, the Quaker Meeting House. Do join us for that physical launch as well, and you can tuck into some of the cake and enjoy the books there as well. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining us today. Have a great weekend, and hope to see you all again very, very soon.
And here are the details for that live launch for anyone who wants them.